All I want to say to all of you is thank you very much, you've been great. Thank you for everything you've given us in Japan. And thank you, really, you're the representatives of the whole world as far as we're concerned. Thank you, and God bless you for everything you've ever given us. This is the last night, the end. Good luck, and thanks a lot. Good night.
I didn't think Machine Head at the time was anything special. It was made in Japan that threw it into the stratosphere.
We did the same songs on stage and it seemed to take off that much bigger than Machine Head.
It's a beautiful snapshot of the band in all its glory, firing off each other, working it out live on stage, on the night.
And then people started to break down. 72, I think we made 2 albums and did 6 US tours.
Something happened. Ritchie and Ian Gillan agreed to disagree.
I wrote a letter saying I was going to leave. No one said anything, so I assumed they wanted me to leave.
It was just pressure, 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 and that's exactly why that split happened.
We started in '68, John Lord and myself, and we put the band together. And I don't think we quite knew what direction that we had. And we kind of flim-flammed around in certain areas.
I think the first album was a recording of everything we'd learned. I don't think we had anything else. I think that was it. A couple of original bits and pieces, and then quite a lot of covers.
Help me get my feet back on the ground.
The highs were the interaction that Ritchie, John and I found with each other, musically and personally. We had a great time. The lows were learning very quickly that the balance of the band, the personnel, couldn't go as far as it really needed to.
As we were staggering into 1969, Ritchie and I particularly realised that the band was in danger of not being quite what we'd seen it as in our minds. You know, it was getting a little bit pop. There we are, like really searching for an identity. And that search goes on pretty much through the first 3 albums.
A friend of mine had a singer in his band, and it was Ian Gillan. So we tried out Ian, and he had the scream, he had the look, and that's why in 1970 we were on our way.
Good morning, and how are you?
And then of course In Rock came out, and that became a phenomenon in the British charts. I mean, it was in the top 10 for over a year. It hit a chord with the British youth and Europe.
When we saw what In Rock had done, it was a calling card. It said, this is Deep Purple. Everybody in the band was absolutely behind it. And that lasted pretty much into the Machine Head era.
Deep Purple and Rock stayed in the charts for over a year. Big success to follow. I think there was a feeling about, well, what do we do next? How do we top that?
Oh, I don't care what you say. I never heard you. I never heard you anyway.
With Fireball, there was a kind of certain intimidation going on. And by the time it was finished, I think we were a little tired.
Fireball was lots of fun, but it was a little more introvert. And still some great tracks on it. but it didn't fire up the imagination of the public the way that In Rock did.
Like the demon inside.
Fireball it's a troublesome album because to me you couldn't have had Fireball without In Rock, but you couldn't have Machine Head without Fireball. So it sits very nicely as part of those three really good rock albums.
But the success that In Rock, and not quite so much, but Fireball gave us, allowed us to say, okay, the next time around we're going to get a situation where once we've got the sound, we do a couple of 3 weeks, we've got the songs together, we just record them, you know. And that's what
Decision. So we thought we'd record an album under studio conditions, but in a live venue.
Well, Claude Nobbs was the instigator of us going to Switzerland. And Claude said that, he could set us up with something over there, which was the casino, to record at the casino.
À Montreux.
Pourquoi?
Oh, j'ai déjà vu le concert hier soir, mais je vais parce qu'il y a beaucoup de monde, comme ça.
Was für ein Konzert?
Die Purple.
Was ist Popmusik für Sie?
Oh, c'est beaucoup parce que la musique pop dit vraiment beaucoup de choses qui avaient la mentalité de nos jeunes. Il y a beaucoup des affinités.
Tausende von Jugendlichen aus der ganzen Schweiz wecken Montreux übers Wochenende aus seinem kurortlichen Schlaf.
Under the new regime and under their employment contracts, they had to record overseas. The question then would be where to go. And the band and Tony and John looked around and spoke to Claude Nobbs, who was a promoter on the continent.
Claude Nobbs, our friend from Montreux, he did the jazz festival. He said, "Look, we got tons of space here. You can do it here. We'll find a place in the casino, which closed for the winter, and everybody knows the story."
Es ist klar, dass die Popmusik doch ein Produkt der heutigen Konsumationsgesellschaft stimmt. Aber darunter gibt es doch Gruppen, die einmal sehr professionell, zweimal musikalisch sehr große Wert haben. Und das ist, was wir versuchen in Montreux zu bringen.
They were actually in Montreux because they were going to record an album called Made in Switzerland. And it was supposed to be recorded live in December at the casino.
It's probably one of the best times of back then. And when we, arranged to go to Switzerland to do this album, it's just a fantastic time, Unfortunately, the casino burned down, but that sprang the song, of course. Without that, there would have been no Smoke on the Water.
Why did you go to Switzerland to record Machine Heads?
Several reasons. Well, one being it's a great place to be, Montreux. We know a lot of people in Montreux, and it was a nice place to go. Second, because we used the Rolling Stones mobile unit, and that was in the south of France, and it was easy to trundle it up to Switzerland. And thirdly, money reasons, tax reasons. It's you can avoid paying some tax on your albums, on your royalties, if you've made the album out of the country. It's a very complicated deal, but it's not illegal. I mean, tax people know about it, but it's just that if you want to take advantage of it, you have to record outside the country. And also, we did it in 2 weeks, where normally we take 3 or 4 months over an album, on and on. But we just had a concentrated 2 weeks, bang, we'd written all the songs and we just went in and recorded them.
The casino in Montreux, in Switzerland, if you were doing a tour of Europe, you'd play there. And the guy who was organising it, Claude Nobbs, said, don't put your gear in yet, because there's one more show to go before you can do it. It's a matinee tomorrow afternoon, Frank Zappa and the Mothers, 3 o'clock. Do you want to go? Sure, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen,
and about an hour into the show, someone fired a flare gun into the ceiling, which was made of, it was like a false ceiling bamboo. And there wasn't much of a fire at first, but things came to a halt and everyone was ordered to leave the building. And there was a little bit of a panic, but not bad. I mean, no one was hurt, strangely enough. And literally within 5 minutes or so, the place was an inferno. The fire had started in the ceiling and it had spread without anyone seeing it. And it was a huge building. It wasn't just a casino. It was a venue. Obviously, that's where we were watching Zappa. There was a disco there, bars, restaurants, a big casino, big convention facilities. So it was a massive building, and it was a wooden building. And bang, it just went up.
And I was the last one to leave the casino, and I brought out the mother of the manager of the casino. I mean, she was still the last one in the kitchen, so I took her by the hand and said, let's go out, and that's it. And within half an hour it was over.
And the next morning we went there, it was still smouldering. It's amazing that no one got hurt.
We just started playing King Kong, but we were playing, and in that part of King Kong I stopped the band and Donna's just playing, and so obviously there was a fire, and a window in the back, a big window with maybe 10 or 15 feet drop down. They broke that and people were jumping out, and so everybody got out.
And Claude, bless him, Claude was wonderful. There's a photograph of Claude in Machine Head, taken as the fire was raging. And he came by the hotel to see us. And the look on his face is evident in that picture. It's a wonderful picture. I mean, his future, his life was going up in flames. And bless him, he didn't think about that. He said, now I'm really worried about you. What are you going to do? We've got to find somewhere else. Montreux, then, it was a very small, sleepy town, very upper class. It was very quiet. I think there was one club, a couple of restaurants, lots of tea shops and lots of little old ladies going out in the afternoon for tea. And we're looking for somewhere where we can make a lot of noise in the middle of the night. That's a pretty tall order. Now, we only had a certain amount of time with the Stones Mobile. We started work in one place, which was a theatre in town, another theatre in town. We did one track there, and the police were hammering on the door. We actually did the track about 1 or 2 in the morning, after spending all evening, rehearsing and getting sounds and stuff. So we obviously couldn't use that place, and we got a little bit desperate.
Well, it was chaos. I mean, from being beautifully organised and arranged, we would record here, the truck would be here, the hotel was there. All of a sudden you've got nowhere to record because it's a bunch of ashes. But you've still got the expense of the hotel, you've still got the truck there that's got to be paid for, everybody's over there. What do? You find somewhere else to do it,
We looked at barns, farms, hotel basements, various places, and I think it took about 5 or 6 days before we found the Grand Hotel, which was closed. It was winter, it was November.
Machine Head to me was, I realised how simple and easy it was to make a good record without all the trappings, without the headaches. We made that record in 3 weeks and 3 days, and it was great substance, great record, and it was done out. And to me that represented how a record should be made. Quick, and to the point.
Came out to Montreux on the lady near shoreline to make records with a mobile. We didn't have much time. The Frank Zappa and the mother were at the best place around. But some stupid with a flare gun burned the place to the ground.
It's interesting the way a band looks at its material when it comes to singles, because we weren't really, as goes without saying, we weren't really a singles band. It wasn't the kind of thing that we felt comfortable sort of putting the material into single form. It didn't come easy to us, but we were writing well by that time, and I honestly thought that we'd written a great single in Never Before. In fact, to the point that when we sent it across to Warner Brothers in the States, we sent it with the indication that Never Before would be the single. Came back the comment, "You must be joking, the hit is Smoke on the Water," to which we said, "You must be joking, the hit is Never Before." We honestly didn't think that Smoke on the Water was hit material. How wrong can you be?
Machine Head, Deep Purple's new album, in your record shop now on Purple Records. Where else?
Machine Head came out and it was a reasonable hit. People liked it. But it wasn't until Made in Japan came out that people actually absorbed it and registered that it was a good record. And we did the same songs on stage and it seemed to take off that much bigger than Machine Head.
Machine Head at the time was anything more special than Fireball or In Rock. And in fact, it wasn't really until we did Made in Japan, the live album, that it really came to life. Yeah, it was a big hit, but it was Made in Japan that threw it into the stratosphere.
All right.
Made in Japan started as an idea from the Japanese record company. They said we want a live album, Japan only. We hated the thought of live albums, strangely, for a band that was so good live. Just thought, maybe not such a... So we said only if it comes out in Japan, right? Thus the title.
Nobody gonna take my car, they're gonna raise this down. Nobody gonna take my car, they're gonna bring this down. Oh, yellow machine, you got everything. Like a driving car, big fast tires and everything. I love it, I need it, I need it. Yeah, it turns me on, alright.
Also, the title was a joke because in England in the 60s, 50s, 60s and 70s, if something was said to be made in Japan, it was almost like it was like second rate. So to us it was like, oh yeah, it's just made in Japan. And it would only ever come out in Japan. We eventually heard it and realised that we had something wonderful.
Back in the early 70s, live albums were viewed as sort of budget albums. viewed as if you had nothing better to do. They were not considered, a proper album. Studio albums were proper albums. Live albums were things you did on the side. And we were kind of wary of doing that because we'd been pretty heavily bootlegged band for a couple of years. Japanese record company that wanted to record the live album, and we said no. And they kept on insisting, and we said, okay, we'll do it in certain conditions. A, it only comes out in Japan. B, it doesn't come out at all if we don't like it. And C, we mix it and have our own engineer record it.
Excellent musicians, what can you say about them? They were the best at what they did, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think influenced a lot of different groups over the years.
Yo, I went to my first Deep Purple concert in 1973, February 1973. It blew my mind. I had never seen energy at that level. I'd never seen performance. I'd never seen personality. It was the biggest thing I'd ever seen.
When I was growing up as a kid, I grew up in California, but the first album that I really got into was Made in Japan, which was a double live album.
In the States, Made in Japan was probably, one of the highlights. Highway Star. All the hits that kind of came through America were the ones that we got.
That was another brilliant album that was recorded under really strange and extreme conditions, I remember Martin Birch was out, we put the control room backstage, so he had no physical eye contact with the band. It was all just listening, and we found that really strange. That turned out fantastic for the time. Brilliant album.
Weren't getting on well off stage, but on stage there was still a massive, important amount of chemistry. Nobody gonna take my car, they're gonna raise the
saw either Zeppelin or Purple when I was a kid, when they were in their heyday, when they were all firing away. I never saw Purple or Zeppelin, so all I had to go on was their respective live things. And on that score, Purple kicked their pants.
I think that Made in Japan might be really, for a lot of people, the quintessential Deep Purple record, especially from that time.
One of the greatest, if not the greatest, live album ever recorded. And of course, Martin Birch, who worked with Purple on just about everything, was our producer in Maiden for many years. And so, you'd sit down, over a few beers and talk to Martin, and you'd get the lowdown, and you'd think, wow, it really was live. There were no overdubs. It was, as was. And that's what makes it even more incredible. It's done on an 8-track or something,
Come on now, everybody, shake your hands like this. That's nice. Come on now, everybody. Come on now, clap your hands. I want everybody to clap their hands. Really loud now. Now listen to your
Every single live version, every single recording is different. So if you hear the 3 nights in Japan in August '72, Strange Kind of Woman, Child of Time, whatever, they're all different from each other. Richie plays different solos. Ian sings different phrases. Ian Pace plays different drum fills. It's the coolest thing because you never know exactly what's coming next.
I think Made in Japan is possibly one of the greatest live rock albums ever made, and I'll tell you why. Firstly, because there's nothing like it that ever came out before. Secondly, it showed you the difference between a band in the studio and a band live.
Come on! Come on! Come on! Let's go split again! Come on! Come on! Come on! Yeah!
We recorded 3 shows. And by that time, the sort of anarchy that was happening on stage had sort of coalesced into certain, you do something on stage as an ad lib, and if it works, you kind of tend to do it another night. So all these little bits and pieces of punctuation between the songs and during the songs were becoming second nature to us.
That is one of the most missed things in rock and roll, is the thing about that it's about a moment up on stage and you don't know where it's going next.
The interplay between Richie and Gillan, for example, guitar, voice, that kind of thing, and the John and Richie thing. It was just pure good fortune that really we recorded that album at really the peak of our performing abilities.
Richie would solo until he didn't want to solo anymore, and if you know what to look for, he'd turn around, he'd raise his right hand, he'd look over at Ian Pace, and then within 2 or 4 bars they would then go into the next part.
A band on fire, I would say, a band absolutely at the top of its game. That's why I love that album. It's a beautiful snapshot of the band in all its glory, playing live, firing off each other, listening to each other, working it out live on stage, on the night.
And it wasn't really until we got back to England, put the tapes up. Wow, they sound great. Maybe this should be out. By that time, the American label, Warner Brothers, weren't interested in a live album. So they wanted the next studio album, which is Who Do You Think We Are? And, back then you don't think you're going to last very long. You think you're only as good as your last record. But if you're lucky, you can get another couple of years out of it, and then who knows what.
One of the great Purple classics is on Who Do You Think We Are? That is Woman from Tokyo. It's made under very difficult circumstances.
So we had In Rock here, we had Fireball, and then we had Machine Head, you know, and then we had Who Do We Think We Are? Again, a little more introvert, a lot more difficult to record, which I think is probably the problem with Who Do We Think We Are?
You know, we were in a villa just outside Rome, which had been chosen for us to record in because it had a wonderful room to record. What they hadn't done was measured the size of an archway through which the mobile unit would have had to have gone to make it nice and easy. The mobile unit wouldn't fit under the archway, so cables had to be bought in specially, you know, special long cables. And we staggered through and we got an album out of it.
So Made in Japan was really the Machine Head record. And if we waited till after Who Do We Think We Are, it would have been out of date. So we really wanted to put it out there. Which they eventually did, but only because our management started importing copies into the States. Realised, or Warner Brothers realised that they were losing out.
Wasn't that good. It started off okay, but there were cracks showing. I think Richie and Ian were kind of getting on too well. I don't know why that happened, but yeah, the cracks were starting to appear then.
Somewhere between Fireball and Who Do We Think We Are, going through the Machine Head period, Richie and Ian Gillan agreed to disagree. Okay? Something happened. I'm not sure what it was. I'm not sure actually that either of them could now iterate exactly what it was that went down between the two of them. But something did.
We'd done about as much as we could do with that kind of rock, as far as I could see. My idea was that there was far too much talent in the band for it to remain static. I thought we were compromising ourselves. I thought we were losing our integrity.
Well, the decision to leave the band was in '72. You know, confused, young, unfocused, frustrated.
The thing that a lot of people forget is he was not fired. He left. I mean, he wrote us a letter saying that he no longer agreed with the direction that the band was taking. And I do have to say that I think if our management had understood that it was actually a cry for help, that he would not have been out of the band.
Something had been thrown into the pot to change the formula. And I don't know what it was, but it seemed to be not the Deep Purple that I joined in '69. And it's not the band it was. And you suddenly think, well, I don't know. I've always made my decisions on the basis of I've got to be enjoying what I'm doing. I didn't know how to fix it, so I thought I'd quit.
Broke my heart at the time. Didn't want that to happen one bit. I was, you know, even through the difficulties with Richie and Gillan, I still thought we had a marvellous band.
Ladies and gentlemen, Deep Purple.
In the band, it was widely presumed that Richie was going to leave and take Pacey with him. Gillan had written his letter of resignation, which left John and I. Richie's one of these guys, I think he's always looking for something new. And unbeknownst to us, he'd been secretly jamming with Phil Lynott of Thin Lizzy. He wanted to do a three-piece on this.
I wanted to form a band with Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy. And I said to Ian Pace, let's have a three-piece of, and we'll play some kind of Hendrix kind of blues stuff.
Our two managers, Tony Edwards and John Coletta, summoned John and I to a restaurant one night in London and said, "This is crazy. You know, the band's breaking up and you're the biggest band in the world right now. Maybe you can persuade Pacey to stay with you and we'll get a new lead singer and a new guitarist and carry on." And as painful as that was to understand, why not? So we said, yeah, let's do that. And our first job, John and I, was to talk Pacey into staying.
At that point, Ian was involved, and he said, "You know what? What would you want to stay in Deep Purple? You know, Ian's leaving. You know, what's the problem with the band? Why won't you stay with Purple?" And I said, "Well, okay, I would expect Roger maybe to leave because I wasn't particularly into what he was doing." And I said, "But that's not fair because Roger's done nothing wrong. I'd rather leave the band, get another thing going, than fire somebody who's done nothing wrong."
The following, I think in January '73, we did a Scandinavian tour, and we got Pacey in the dressing room afterwards and said, "Look, stick with us. We'll get a new guitarist, a new singer," and he said he'd think about it.
You have to remember, I was very much a kid then, and I was a kid in a candy store. My life was one big party, and I really didn't worry about what was going to happen the next day, the next gig. I mean, that sort of responsibility was taken on by Richie and John, who were a little further along life's highway than I was.
We did a Japanese tour, and then 2 American tours. And it was on the second American tour that I realized that no one was talking to me.
Ian said, "Okay, we'll fire Roger if you're going to stay." And I felt really awkward. I said, "Okay."
It was a kind of weird feeling. I was kind of out in the cold. And I couldn't put my finger on what was going on. We were in Jacksonville, Florida. Came back to the motel we were staying in the night. I knocked on Tony Edwards' door, our manager at the time. He said, "Yeah, what do you want?" I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Nothing." I said, "Something's going on." He said, No, nothing's going on." I said, "Well, I'm not leaving this room until you level with me." He said, "Okay, they want you to leave the band." Why? He said, "I don't know, but that's the way it is. Richie's decided he'll stay with the band on the condition that you leave." Pretty hurtful thing to hear.
Sweet child in time, you'll see the line, a line that's drawn between the good and the bad.
Maybe I did the wrong thing, but I said, "Well, you're not going to fire me. I'll keep my dignity and I will leave of my own accord. And why didn't anyone tell me this before?" And they said, "Because we wanted to finish the tour. We didn't want you leaving in the middle of a tour." I said, "Well, fuck them. I'll fulfill my duty. I'll be the gentleman here. I'll fulfill my duties and then I'm gone. So the rest of that tour, and actually it was the Japanese tour was the last one. I remember squaring with John Lord on the flight to Tokyo, and he was pretty embarrassed and upset. And he said, "Well, sorry, mate, that's the way it is." And I felt really let down, actually, by John and Pacey in particular, more than Richie, strange enough. Richie'd always been, on his own course anyway. And Richie said to me on the final night, we passed on the stairs leading up to the dressing rooms, and he said, "Just want to say, it's not personal, it's business." And then he carried on.
Roger was let go, and I stayed with the band, and we got in another bass player and another singer. I wanted to go more towards the melodic content area, which is what I'm doing now as well.
It was like the late 72 or even the middle of 72, Trapeze were playing at the Whiskey A Go-Go 3 nights or 4 nights, and I noticed in the audience, John Lord was there one night, Ian Pace was there, Richie was there like separately, and I just figured these guys were really big fans of trapeze, or they were becoming, fans of trapeze, and very vulnerable and naive back then, and sort of same thing happened in the Marquee in London, and they each came and a couple of times, and and then I had a feeling they were there for another reason, and I just didn't realize at the moment they were going to ask me to join.
We'd all drifted apart. I mean, personally, when there were no girlfriends, everyone would travel together. And gradually, I was probably the worst culprit. I mean, there's no finger pointing here or anyone to blame or anything like that, but except maybe me. I mean, it was me as much as anyone, or probably more. But the personal touch had gone. So I didn't really know that Roger was leaving until it happened, or on the plane home.
I mean, I was very pleased with the music. It was good. I was not in any way ashamed of it, but I felt there was a time to add a new dimension to it, or to adopt a slightly different approach without losing our identity, but just naturally progressing. Otherwise we'd have faded away. And this is why, and nobody really wanted to do that, so this is why we left.
I mean, I left in, June? And I think it was July or August that Billboard announced the #1 selling artists. We had 2 awards, #1 band and #1 album. And I was in the office one day and I saw the billboard with the announcement and I looked at it. Huge, great photograph showing Coverdale with Hughes. And I just, that's really the icing on the cake. That was my success. And not only have I been kicked out of the band, but that's been taken away from me as well.
Okay. We all got watches with Mark II on it, and I'm going, well, this is really nice, but this surely should be Roger's watch. I was getting plaques. I think I got a couple of plaques from, who do you think we are? Some in Italy or something.
However, I was mature enough to realise that it wasn't Coverdale's fault or Glenn Hughes' fault any more than it was my fault regarding Nick Simper.
It wasn't really uncomfortable. It was just the way it was,
And there was no point in holding grudges like that.
I think Ian's timing, Ian Gillan's timing about leaving the band was terrible. I mean, the band was just on the edge of becoming absolutely massive. And indeed, Burn as an album actually did take advantage of that because it's a tremendously good album. And the band did take that leap into stadium rock. We did 6 American tours. It was ridiculous. And when Ian did quit, I really thought that was the end of it. And then one of our managers, John Coletta, showed me a copy of Billboard. We had 11 different entries, singles, albums, back albums. It was exploding. And that year, 1973, we were the top album-selling artists in the United States. And he said, you can't stop now. So we just did. We lost our singer and our bass player. I mean, you know, how much more final can that get? He said, replace them.
All I want to say to all of you is thank you very much. You've been great. Thank you for everything you've given us in Japan. This is the last night. The end. Good luck. Thanks a lot.
One of the reasons Made in Japan is so successful and still sells, and people still rate it as one of the great live albums, rock albums. One of the reasons for that is the brilliance of our producer, of Martin Birch. Absolutely, under incredibly difficult conditions, to produce that.
No, I think we'd like to try it with the track again. Will you?
Because Made in Japan had come out so well, I think it's regarded by a lot of people as a great live album at that point. I think it actually enhanced the album Machine Head, because it was virtually Machine Head live on stage.
I look back now only at it exploded. And it was after Ian Gillan actually left in 73, I guess, that we became aware of the 2 versions of Smoke on the Water, both in the American top 10 at the same time.
I heard the live version of Smoke on the Water in the car one day, and live version, and Pacey starts and John starts and the bass came in, and I thought, wow, and I suddenly felt very proud of that. You know, as simple as it is, it was exactly what was needed.
Originally wrote it like that, with a kind of but that didn't kind of go down with the others at the time, so we kept it to the
funny thing. I mean, this is an odd thing, but I've noticed that when any guitar player goes to redo a track from Machine Head, they overdo it.